Southeast Asia, in terms of temperature, very little variation. Very consistent temperatures throughout the year. We know this for a few different reasons. First off, the equator goes right through here, so they're not going to get much change in the intensity of the solar energy, but also the day length is very consistent. It's pretty much always about 12 hours of sunlight each and every day. So very consistent. Secondly, we don't see huge mountain chains coming through here. It is quite rugged. Not saying there's no topography change, but we don't see the Himalayas. We don't see the Rockies. We don't see the Caucasus Mountains in this particular area. So we're not going to be affected by altitude differences. Further, we're very maritime. And this is probably the most maritime, other than maybe the Caribbean and Central America, where we find extreme amounts of islands, and the environments there, you're not going to see much changes in the temperature. We see the moderating influences of a water body. So all these reasons combine to explain why we see very little temperature variation here in Southeast Asia. So what I'm going to do is just go through the various months of the year. We're going to see pretty much, most of the places are going to stay yellow. Now, you do see some variations in those highland areas. I've mentioned, some highland areas, particularly northern mainland Southeast Asia up there along the border with China. We should see a little bit more fluctuation, but that also makes sense a little farther from the equator than those areas right smack dab in the tropical areas. So most definitely, we've got A climates overwhelmingly in this particular area of the world. So January, now we go then through February, March, and we see, some temperature changes. It gets definitely warmer, especially in northern mainland Southeast Asia, because that's their summertime. And we see pretty much it's yellow throughout much of the year. So once again, what we do is we like to look at the before and after. And so January to July, so we see, for the most part, we're yellow. We look at the Philippines, Indonesia, hardly any change. So Singapore, if you ever go to Singapore, pretty much every day, it's 80 degrees. One of my college roommates teaches tennis in Singapore, and he doesn't buy sweatpants, he doesn't need pants, he doesn't need long sleeve shirts, he wears t-shirts and shorts every single day of the year because it's very consistently warm. In terms of precipitation, we do see some differences. Now, overwhelmingly, what you're going to find is those insular part of Southeast Asia gets a huge amount of rain. Whereas when you go to the mainland areas, you're going to get a little bit more variations, and it's going to change with the seasons. So once again here, just like South Asia, we have the role of the Intertropical Convergence zone, that dense rain belt that moves as the seasons change. And so during the summer period, the summer monsoon, warm air moves towards the Asian continent, bringing warmer temperatures, but also a whole lot more rain to mainland Southeast Asia. Whereas in the wintertime, you see the air moves off of the Asian continent towards insular Southeast Asia, and then thus drying out mainland Southeast Asia, if you would. So here we see January. We're going to go through the seasons, and we should see, for the most part, insular stays relatively, high amounts of precipitation, whereas then in the mainland, you're going to get that pronounced dry period, but also that pronounced wet period during the wet monsoon season. So in some places, they actually get two monsoon seasons, so they're getting a huge amount of rain. Because they get kind of just depending on where your island is, you might get the movement of warm, moist air coming from your south during one monsoon season, and then warm, moist air might come from the north during the other season. This depends on if you're surrounded by water. But mainland Southeast Asia, you look what's to the north of that is overwhelmingly continental, extremely dry Asia. And so we're going to go through the various months, and so January, February, March. We can see now, as we're getting to the summer monsoon period, we can see now that rain moves up there in Burma, Thailand, Laos, which we see the dense amount of rain. So the precipitation pattern changes, and now we see a huge amount of rain up there in mainland Southeast Asia. And it's still raining. They still get a good amount of precipitation there in insular Southeast Asia, but the patterns change. And of course, now we're entering the dry monsoon period for mainland Southeast Asia. And so the winter monsoon now dumps a huge amount of rain there in the insular part of Southeast Asia.